They say people don't change overnight. But sometimes the moment your world shatters, you realize they changed a long time ago, and you just didn't want to see it. My name is Sarah Whitman. I'm 38, a pediatric nurse in Minneapolis, and for 14 years, I believed I was married to a good man. Alex Whitman, corporate litigation attorney, calm, composed, always charming in public. People used to say we were the perfect pair. I used to believe that too, until I saw him smile at someone else the way he hadn't smiled at me in years. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, the kind that shouldn't hold the power to ruin your life. I had just wrapped up a double shift at the hospital, 2 back-to-back emergencies, and a new mother sobbing in my arms after losing her child. I remember thinking, just make it home. Just get through this day. The rain had just started when I pulled into the parking lot of Rivlin and Hart, Alex's firm. I wasn't planning a surprise. He'd left his briefcase at home, and I thought, why not bring it to him? Maybe we could grab dinner afterward. We hadn't done that in weeks. I climbed the marble steps, balancing the case, and gave the front desk a tired smile. I'm just dropping this off for Alex Whitman. Sarah, his wife. The receptionist, a young girl who seemed too polished to be as nervous as she looked, glanced at the case and said, "He's in conference room 3, just down that hall." I thanked her and made my way quietly down the hallway. I remember everything about that moment. The muted hallway lights, the subtle echo of my footsteps, the chill of the air conditioning against my damp sleeves. The door was ajar. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I was just approaching. But then I heard a laugh. Soft. Familiar. His. Then hers. "God, you make me forget I have a fiancé," the woman said, her voice light, playful. "You make me forget I have a wife," Alex replied. My breath caught. That voice, it wasn't just infidelity. It was intimacy, comfort, practice. I pushed the door a little further open. There he was, my husband, sitting across from a woman I recognized, Laura Crenshaw, a paralegal in his firm. I remembered her from the Christmas party. He introduced her as Laura from HR. She was young, maybe 27, with sleek auburn hair and a laugh that lingered too long. But it wasn't the conversation or even the hand she placed on his arm that broke me. It was the smile. Alex had a specific smile, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes, the one he used when we danced in our first apartment, barefoot and broke, pretending a cheap wine was vintage champagne. He smiled at her like that, and I hadn't seen that smile in years. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked back down the hall, the briefcase still clutched in my hand like a fool's prop in a play I didn't audition for. By the time I got home, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. I just stood there, in the center of our kitchen, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator. I placed the briefcase on the counter, opened the drawer where we kept takeout menus, and picked one at random. That night, I ate alone. The next morning, Alex kissed my cheek like he always did. "Morning, babe," he said casually, sipping coffee from the mug I'd bought him on our 5th anniversary. It said, "Still crazy in love." Back then, it had been true. I watched him in silence. He scrolled through his phone, reading what I assumed were emails or maybe texts from her, Laura. His thumbs moved in patterns too familiar, his expression unreadable. But I wasn't looking at his face. I was looking at his lies. "I was thinking of making dinner tonight," I said, watching his eyes. He didn't look up. "That sounds great. Laura likes salmon, doesn't she?" He froze. His hand stopped. He looked up slowly, and for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes, not guilt. Calculation. "What are you talking about?" I didn't flinch. "Conference room 3. Yesterday. I was there." He stood up from the table, too fast. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I think you're misunderstanding." "Don't insult me." His mouth opened, then closed again. That's when I realized he had rehearsed excuses for everything. He just never thought he'd need one for me. "I didn't plan anything," he said finally, softening his tone. "It was nothing serious. Nothing serious. That phrase stayed with me like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I nodded slowly, not because I accepted it, but because I needed him to keep talking. Because I had no proof yet. That day, I didn't go to work. I called in sick and drove across town to a small, discreet law office I'd researched in the early hours of the morning. I met with a woman named Elaine Reddick, divorce attorney, ex-military, no nonsense. Her eyes reminded me of my mother's when she used to warn me about ignoring red flags just because they came in pretty wrapping. I need to know what's legally mine, I told her, and I need to know how deep he's buried his secrets. Elaine nodded and took notes. Then we start with two things, finances and surveillance. Men like him never just cheat on the heart. They cheat on paper too. I left her office with a heavy folder of instructions and a heavier heart. I didn't cry until I got home. And even then, the tears weren't for the marriage. They were for the girl I used to be, the one who believed a man like Alex couldn't lie like that and sleep peacefully beside her. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly gathered documents, bank records, passwords, old phone bills. I downloaded call logs. I hired a digital investigator, a quiet man named Jonah, who barely looked me in the eye, but handled everything like a ghost in the wires. Each night, I smiled across the dinner table. Each morning, I handed him coffee. And each time he left the house, I added another piece to the puzzle. Then one night, I found it, hidden in a folder labeled Tax Prep 2021. A file of transfers. Tens of thousands of dollars slowly moved into accounts I didn't recognize. A few in his name only. One under a trust titled Whitman Legacy Holdings, the same name he jokingly said he'd use if he ever started a business for our future kids. Except we'd stopped trying to have kids 5 years ago. After my second miscarriage, Alex never brought it up again. He told me I was enough, but maybe I wasn't. Not for him. The next morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself hard. Not in judgment, not in shame. I stared like a woman ready to step out of someone else's shadow. I took off the necklace he gave me when we bought our first house. I placed it in the drawer beside my rings. My wedding band hadn't fit right in months anyway. I walked out of that bathroom with a plan. This time, I wouldn't confront him with tears. I would confront him with truth. But not yet. The performance wasn't over. Not until I had everything. I couldn't sleep. For weeks after that night, the night I saw Ethan's phone light up with her name while he claimed he was working late, I lived in a strange fog. I functioned. I showed up at the hospital, met with patients, scheduled rounds, laughed when I had to, nodded during staff meetings. But inside, my mind was running a separate life, a quiet, private war. Every time Ethan touched me, I flinched a little. Not obviously, just enough that he didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. I had mastered the art of pretending. And yet, every night, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, playing detective in my own home, looking for breadcrumbs in the shadows. It wasn't just the messages anymore. I noticed other things, little things, like how he cleared his browser history daily, like how he always showered before coming home, even on non-surgery days, like how he left his Apple Watch charging in his study instead of wearing it, when I knew damn well he used to track his steps religiously. I kept asking myself, was I imagining it? But no, I wasn't. One Saturday morning, I made up an excuse about having brunch with the girls and instead drove to a small electronics store on the edge of town. I bought a GPS tracker, something I never thought I'd do. My hands trembled when I placed it under the passenger seat of his Tesla later that afternoon. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after doing it. It wasn't guilt. It was grief. Grief for the version of me that still believed in the man I married. That Monday, I stayed late at work under the pretense of staff training. I checked the tracker. He wasn't at the hospital. He wasn't at his gym. He was in Cherry Creek, at a townhouse registered under a private LLC. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started building a folder. Not just to protect myself, but because I needed the truth on paper to see it, hold it, name it. The affair, the lies, the quiet erosion of my confidence, the subtle rewiring of my instincts. The folder grew thicker by the day, call logs, screenshots, anonymous tip-offs from a friend in HR. Even receipts Ethan had carelessly left in his coat pocket. He wasn't just cheating, he was planning something. I found a draft email he'd saved on his laptop, titled Post-Nup Proposal, June Anniversary. It was a legal document he never mentioned to me. It talked about financial separation, asset reassignment, and a clause that would essentially lock me out of any shared inheritance or post-divorce claim if I ever abandoned the marriage. Abandoned? He was the one gutting it from the inside. I sat there, reading every word, shaking. That email wasn't just a plan. It was a knife, and he'd been sharpening it while kissing my forehead goodnight. I didn't cry. I got organized, and I called Claire. Claire Whitmore had once been a senior partner at the largest family law firm in the state. She represented women in high-net-worth divorces, corporate abuse survivors, and, most importantly, she didn't flinch in the face of power. We met at a quiet cafe off 17th Avenue. She listened to everything, never interrupted. Her eyes were sharp, her silence brutal. When I finished, she just said, "Sarah, you've got enough evidence to bring down a man twice his size. But the question is, are you ready for war?" I thought about that question for a long time. The answer didn't come in a roar. It came in a whisper. Yes, not for revenge, not for victory, but for peace. Because I wanted the kind of life where I didn't need to look over my shoulder every time my phone beeped, where I didn't need to shrink just to survive. That night, I looked at Ethan across the dinner table. He was talking about something, some new surgical technique, some award he was nominated for. I nodded, smiled, even laughed. And as I refilled his wine glass, I knew something he didn't. The next move would be mine, and it wouldn't be loud. It would be clean, cold, and undeniable. This wasn't just about exposing his betrayal. This was about reclaiming my voice from the years I was told I was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. This was about letting the silence speak. For every moment, I'd swallowed my pain in the name of keeping the peace. The war had started, but this time I was ready. I didn't make any grand announcement. I didn't scream, throw things, or collapse into hysterics. Instead, I began to disappear from the version of me Ethan thought he knew. I started waking up earlier than him, slipping out for long walks around Sloan's Lake, breathing in the cold air like it belonged only to me. I didn't make breakfast anymore. I stopped ironing his shirts. I didn't ask about his meetings or offer to prep his travel bags. Slowly, quietly, I began erasing my unpaid labor from his life, and he barely noticed. That was the part that hurt the most. The woman who had once been his sounding board, a support system, his late-night voice of reason. I had become background noise to him, just another piece of furniture in his curated world. One Thursday afternoon, Claire called. "Sarah," she said, "it's time." Her voice was steady, firm. "We've compiled everything. Phone records, financial activity, the property in Cherry Creek, and that post-nup email. That alone is enough to expose premeditated marital coercion." I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo of Ethan and me on our wedding day. He looked so young then, so certain. My smile in that picture was real and so naive. Claire continued, "We can file this quietly with a strong protection clause, but there's something you need to know." She paused. "There's evidence he's been tracking you." I froze. "Tracking me?" "Yes. His IT guy at the firm, under the radar, installed a shadow app on your old phone. It's how he knew when you left work, when you went to yoga, when you were at Maya's." The air left my lungs. That sickening drop in my stomach, the one I had been denying for months, hit me like a landslide. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was surveillance. It was control. It was violation. He hadn't just cheated on me. He'd invaded the last place I thought was safe, my autonomy. I met Claire's eyes across the Zoom screen. "We fight. All the way. She nodded. Then I'll draft the opening move. The following week, I sat across from Ethan in our living room. The fire was on. A bottle of Merlot sat unopened on the table. He was scrolling through his emails like it was any other evening. I cleared my throat. I need to talk to you. He didn't look up. Sure, just give me a sec. I've spoken to an attorney, I said, cutting clean through the quiet. That got his attention. He blinked. Excuse me. I know about Dana. He went still. And I know about the townhouse in Cherry Creek. About the post-nup draft. The spyware on my phone. His jaw tensed. What the hell are you talking about? I'm not here to fight, I said, voice calm. I'm here to inform you. You will receive official documents from my legal counsel in 48 hours. We're filing for divorce. He stood up, pacing. Sarah, wait. Just slow down. We can talk. No. We've done enough talking. I spent years asking you to be honest, begging you to see me, to value me. You lied, Ethan. Repeatedly. Intentionally. And now you've lost the right to ask for my patience. His face changed then, shifted from confusion to calculation. This will ruin my reputation, he said, voice low. I looked him straight in the eye. You ruined it. I'm just documenting it. He scoffed. You think anyone will believe you over me? I smiled, not with joy, but with the clarity of someone who no longer feared him. I don't need them to believe me. I have facts. I have receipts. I have a team. He sat back down, defeated but not apologetic. That night, I packed a small bag and left for Maya's. As I stepped into her apartment, the smell of lavender oil and warmth hit me like a bomb. Maya didn't ask for details. She just poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me a soft blanket, and said, You did it! And in that moment, wrapped in silence and safety, I realized I was no longer surviving. I was beginning. The morning of the filing, my phone buzzed incessantly. Calls, texts, emails, all from people I barely recognized or hadn't spoken to in years. Lawyers, reporters, former colleagues. Ethan's carefully constructed world was cracking wide open. I sat in Claire's office, watching as she reviewed every last document one more time. This is solid, she said, eyes bright with determination. We've got bank transfers, surveillance logs, emails, even that damn post-nup draft. No room for him to wiggle out of this. I nodded, but inside my heart hammered a nervous rhythm. It wasn't just the paperwork or the lawsuit. It was the thought of facing him, in court, in front of everyone. I had spent 14 years shrinking to fit the mold Ethan demanded. Tonight, I wouldn't shrink anymore. The courthouse was cold and gray, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Ethan arrived dressed in a tailored suit, face calm but eyes sharp, predatory even. I met his gaze and refused to look away. The room filled with tension. Jack's sister Marissa sat with her husband, silently observing. Maya was beside me, offering quiet strength. Helen, Ethan's mother, sat stiffly, eyes flicking between her son and me. Claire began by laying out the facts, the financial deception, the hidden surveillance, the emotional manipulation that had chipped away at my life piece by piece. When she presented the spyware logs, Ethan's calm cracked. He stammered, trying to explain away the evidence. But the truth was a hard wall no lie could dismantle. Then the emails between Ethan and Dana, showing how they'd conspired not just to betray me, but to control and isolate. Dana's lawyer tried to deny everything, but even their defense crumbled under the weight of facts. Between the court sessions, I saw a different side of Ethan, a man unraveling. Late at night, when the courtroom lights dimmed, I caught glimpses of desperation in his eyes. He approached me once, voice low. Sarah, can we talk? I shook my head. No, this is about me now. It's my time. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed, eager for details. Maya held my hand tightly as we walked to the car. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. I took a deep breath. "Yes," I whispered, "but I'm ready." The months that followed were grueling. Every deposition, every hearing, every whispered rumor in the hallways chipped away at the life I'd known. But with every challenge I found strength, not from court victories or legal victories, but from reclaiming my voice, my story, my truth. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Claire handed me the final papers. "Sign here," she said. "The divorce finalized. No more secrets. No more lies. No more control." I stepped out of the courthouse with a new name on the papers and a new life waiting for me. My smile was genuine this time. The weight of 14 years lifted. Freedom wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and this was only the beginning. The moment the divorce was finalized, I felt an overwhelming mix of relief and uncertainty. It was like stepping out of a long, suffocating tunnel and into the blinding light of a new day. But with that light came shadows, fears about what the future held, and doubts about whether I could really start over. I moved into a small but sunny apartment in Edgewater, a neighborhood I had admired but never dared to call home before. The balcony overlooked the shimmering water of Sloane's Lake, and I found myself standing there every morning, watching the city wake up around me. It was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos I had left behind. For the first time in years, I bought groceries for just myself. I cooked meals without worrying if Ethan would like them or if Dana would mock my choices. I laughed louder, talked more openly, and even started taking yoga classes again. Not to please anyone, but because I enjoyed the way it made my body feel alive and free. Work changed, too. The hospital promoted me to Director of Patient Advocacy Coordination, a role I had once thought was beyond my reach. I threw myself into the job, using my experiences to help others navigate difficult times, just like I had. The people in my life shifted, too. Old friends, the ones Ethan had scoffed at, calling them too loud or bad influences, suddenly became my lifeline. They reminded me of the joy and unpredictability I had pushed away for years. Maya, the friend who had welcomed me that rainy night, became my closest confidant. We started a new tradition, the last Saturday night of every month. We'd gather at a restaurant Ethan would have never approved of, celebrating life and freedom. Then, slowly, someone new appeared. Daniel. He wasn't flashy or dramatic, just a kind man with warm eyes and a gentle smile. We met at a hospital seminar, where I spilled coffee on the sign-in sheet, an embarrassing moment I expected him to judge me for. But he didn't. Instead, he handed me a napkin and smiled. We talked more after that, dinners turning into long conversations about everything and nothing. With him, I didn't feel like hiding my scars or pretending to be someone I wasn't. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to be truly seen. Of course, the past still haunted me sometimes. Late at night, my phone would ring unexpectedly, making me jolt awake. I'd have nightmares about being trapped in that kitchen, hearing Ethan's voice demanding, "Can't you just try a little harder?" But when I woke, I reminded myself where I was safe in my own apartment, where no one checked my bills or told me what to wear. I wasn't a prisoner anymore. Freedom wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. I had claimed it, with careful silence, with truth spoken at the right moment, and with a courage I didn't know I had. My journey taught me something powerful. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a mask for control. It takes real courage to face the truth and reclaim your power. I didn't seek loud revenge. I chose evidence, dignity, and truth. What I built wasn't just the end of a toxic marriage. It was the beginning of a life defined by freedom, worth, and light. So here I am living that life, and it's only just beginning. One morning in early spring, nearly a year after the divorce, I received a letter. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from Emma Holden, Jack's first wife. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the cream-colored paper. Her handwriting was neat, steady, stronger than I imagined for someone who had walked a similar path of silence and survival. Sarah, you don't know me, but I know enough of your story to understand your strength. What you did, what you stood up to matters. Not just for you, but for women like me. You face the monster in the light, and that has a ripple effect far beyond what you can see. I left quietly because I was scared. You left with truth, and because of that, people are listening now. I just wanted to say thank you. I sat for a long time after reading her words, the paper clutched to my chest. For the first time, I realized that my fight, painful, raw, and lonely as it had been, was not in vain. The silence I broke had reached further than I ever imagined. It had given voice to someone else's truth. Later that evening, I stood on my balcony overlooking Sloane's Lake. The breeze carried the scent of blooming lilacs, the sky above brushed in soft orange and lavender. I thought of the girl I used to be, the woman who had learned to tiptoe around her husband's mood, the wife who had apologized for things that weren't her fault, who had laughed a little less each year, who had once believed she was too much and not enough, all at once. She no longer lived here. In her place stood someone new, someone whole. Not because the pain disappeared, but because I had finally stopped hiding from it. I had stared it down piece by piece and let it teach me what I needed to survive, and then to thrive. Daniel came over a few minutes later. We didn't talk about the past, we didn't need to. He handed me a cup of tea, and we sat side by side, looking out at the lake. In his silence, I found comfort. In his company, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I was already enough. He turned to me and asked gently, "Do you ever regret leaving?" I didn't hesitate. "No," I said, "because I didn't leave something. I reclaimed something." He smiled. That night, I didn't dream of locked kitchens or ringing phones. I dreamt of wide open roads, of laughter spilling out of sunlit windows, of a life with no apologies, no masks, only truth. And now, to you, the one reading my story, if you've ever felt small in your own life, if you've ever been told to stay quiet, to smile more, to not make a scene, hear me now. You are not alone. Your silence does not define you. Your strength is not measured by how long you endure someone else's control. You get to choose your moment. And when you do, I promise there is light on the other side. I didn't just survive Ethan. I became Sarah, unfiltered, unbroken, free. This is my new dawn, and it's only just begun.